So just got through watching what was a fantastic fight over in Thailand with Tamanun Niamtrong, aka Knockout CP Freshmart, defending his WBA World Minimumweight Championship against Ray the Hitman Loreto out of the Philippines. Really good fight between these two. Fight where Loreto started off strong, was giving CP a hell of a lot of problems throughout the first few rounds. CP eventually managed to kind of come on just as Loreto was slowing down a little bit, did a lot of good work to the body. And then finally in the third portion of the fight, it was a bit of a back and forth fight. It seemed like CP was starting to get a little bit tired, trying to hang on, but he also managed to score a couple of his own really nice, very telling and very much shots that I think largely played into how the fight was scored. At the very least, as far as I'm concerned. He did wind up getting a unanimous decision, 117 to 110 on two of the judges' scorecards, 115 to 113 on the third. And the way that I saw it, I mean, this was pretty much a 50-50 fight. I wound up actually scoring this fight 6 rounds to 6, and then there was a knockdown that CP managed to score in the ninth round that gave him an extra point. And the funny thing is, that knockdown could be a little bit iffy. It was a little bit of a shove and a punch that landed at the same time as it was going on, and Loreto wound up going down. It was really a fantastic fight between these two. Just to kind of summarize how I saw the fight going, first couple of rounds was pretty much dominated by Loreto, beating CP to the punch. CP is, he starts a little bit slow. Usually he'll take the first round and a half to kind of get into a rhythm, kind of figure out his opponent, get the timing together. But here, it seemed like he was having a lot of trouble. Just the fact that Loreto was kind of doubling and tripling up on the left hand, left cross, being that he's a southpaw. The right hook was giving CP a lot of problems. The right hook to the body even as well. I think was giving Freshmart some issues and having him a little bit hesitant to kind of open up early on. There was a lot of posing, a lot of kind of feinting from CP, but not a whole hell of a lot of throwing actual punches. With Loreto, he was the one really kind of dictating the pace, dictating the action, and getting off first. It really wasn't until probably the fourth round where CP started to try to get off first a little bit. He did a little bit in the third round as well. Third round was a very close, kind of even back and forth type round as well as the fourth. I did think that Loreto edged the third and CP edged the fourth, however. But I mean, that seemed to be kind of where the tide was starting to change, where CP was starting to get off first a little bit more, starting to go to the body a bit more, especially the right hand, right pretty much to the solar plexus of Loreto. Was starting to, pay off a little bit in his focus there. And the thing is, there had been a lot of damage done in those first 3 rounds, especially, that you could already see that CP's left eye was starting to close up a little bit. And I mean, that just goes to show Loreto's power. This is the guy that managed to pull off 2 huge upset knockouts over Nkosonati Joyi, former strawweight champion, former minimum weight mini flyweight champion, 105-pound champion of the world. And a fighter that I was really high on back when he was a champion, wound up getting upset in a fight where he gassed out against Mario Rodriguez, and then in his comeback fights, basically where he was looking to try and campaign at a new weight class at 108, Loreto just went in there and smashed him, knocked him out in the third round in the first fight, knocked him out in the first round in the second fight. But I'll get back to that after the fact. Basically, you could tell that Loreto was doing damage with those shots. He definitely still had the big power for his own right. But CP was starting to get into a little bit of rhythm himself. The fifth round was another kind of a toss around. I wound up edging that to Loreto. I thought he was just doing the slightly cleaner work, and I thought he controlled more of the round most of the time. Whereas CP's shots, I think, were somewhat a little bit more too much in spurts in comparison. But from round 6 through 9, it seemed like was where CP started to kind of take over. The body work, I think, was definitely paying dividends by that point. Loreto was definitely looking a lot more visibly kind of shaken up. To the body, looked like physically more tired than he had been in the earlier rounds. And from that point forward, it seemed like CP was really the one that was dictating the pace and was getting off his punches first, as opposed to trying to wait for Loreto and trying to counter. And that really wasn't working out particularly well for him because Loreto had the faster hands early on. It seemed like as he started to get a little bit tired, he started to slow down a little bit, and CP was able to sharpshoot him a little bit. So 6th, 7th, and 8th, CP I thought was controlling everything with his timing, making much better use of the distance and kind of stepping in and getting out just out of range of Loreto's swings were starting to get a little bit wider as time went on, as he started to get tired a little bit. His form started to break down just slightly. The ninth round was the big one for CP, however, because Loreto was actually looking like he was starting to come back in the ninth round. He was doing a little bit of damage to CP. By that point, the left eye was damn near swollen shut. He was a very big hematoma, like right up underneath the eyebrow. But he managed to kind of catch Loreto off balance in the fact that they were almost like kind of in a mid clinch, like a semi clinch, and he kind of it's almost like CP was kind of like shedding him off, kind of like shoving him off just slightly, but he also landed a right hand just right at the same time that he was doing that, and Loreto wound up just kind of falling back right onto his backside, and the ref of course called it a knockdown because the punch landed. And I think there would probably be very few refs that wouldn't call that a knockdown simply because of everything that was involved, and it wasn't entirely just him being pushed off balance. There was a punch landed that definitely forced him off, and his feet just weren't quite under him. I think that kind of goes to the whole protect yourself at all times adage. Just the fact that it wasn't just not necessarily that he wasn't protecting himself from being hit, but also wasn't necessarily protecting himself in terms of his foot placement and his leverage from being able to get knocked off balance the way they was. The 10th round I thought was another CP round, another kind of close one though. It seemed like at that point he was definitely starting to run out of gas. Started getting a little bit dirty in there, clinching a lot more, pulling Loreto's head down, and things of that nature. The 11th and the 12th round, I thought that Loreto was starting to come back on, especially the 12th. The 12th round was definitely a Loreto round. 11th was a little bit more of a toss-up. But even though CP was kind of bullying Loreto and kind of like mushing him a little bit, pushing his head down, pulling his head down, clinching him a lot, kind of like grappling with him and hitting him in the clinch and hitting him and then grabbing him like immediately, and that was kind of throwing Loreto off. I do still think that the slightly cleaner shots were landed by Loreto, and especially so in the 12th round, and so that's why I gave him that round, which is how I basically came to the score of 6 rounds to 6. But you have the knockdown that gives CP an extra point, so he wound up taking it. But this was a really good fight, definitely the hardest fight of Knockout CP Freshmart's career so far. It's really interesting just the way that these two kind of eventually came across each other. Knockout CP Freshmart, as I've mentioned before, he was a first ever unified, actually I think even undisputed Muay Thai champ for his weight class. He had the WBC title, I'm trying to think of the two major other titles that are in Thailand. So I know there's the WBC Muay Thai title, and then there's damn it, I'm completely blanking on the name. Rajadamnern and Lumpini and Rajadamnern. Those are the titles that he managed to get, and then of course he wound up transitioning over to boxing in 2012. I think he was 20 at the time, and since then he's managed to have a great won the title, which was an interim title against Carlos Buitrago, and then wound up actually getting the full title when he defeated Byron Rojas, guy that that managed to upset Heki Butler. And the Rojas and Buitrago fights were actually fairly difficult for him too, but with those two fights, I think those were a lot more competitive throughout the entirety of the fight. With regard to this one, it seemed like CP was having a lot of trouble early on with Loreto, and just like Loreto's power, closing up his eye and everything as early as about like the 5th round, I think was something that a lot of adversity that he wound up having to fight through. And Loreto is a fighter that's known about adversity. I mean, the guy has 14 losses now with only 23 wins. He's one of these fighters that kind of had a hard luck early career. Not the best management, was getting thrown in there against some fighters that were just more experienced, more skilled than he was at the time, and so he racked up a lot of losses, but he managed to learn from those losses. Came back strong. As I mentioned, he scored the 2 big upset knockout wins over Kosanati Joyi, as well as a technical decision win that he had over another former champion, Potsawan Pupramuk, and here against CP, he came up just short. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Loreto get another title shot at sometime in the near future. Very good fighter, very competitive here against CP. CP just kind of managed to somewhat outlast him. It seemed like Loreto's conditioning somewhat wound up being the thing that kind of let him down. But he's managed to grow in a major way from his past losses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he grew from this loss as well. As for CP, he's another fighter that similar to Loreto, he's been learning from these close fights. I thought he learned from the Buitrago fight and did much better in their rematch. Defeated him much more clearly. Hasn't rematched with Rojas yet. I wouldn't be surprised to see him rematch Byron Rojas at some point in the near future, because Rojas is fighting his way back into contention. He's managed to rack up a few wins since the very, very, very close decision loss that he had to CP. I mean, from there, we'll just see exactly how it goes. Just gonna take a quick look at the rankings real quick to see exactly who might wind up being the potential next opponent. Loreto was actually the mandatory for CP, so there, we could wind up seeing a knockout CP Freshmart against anybody in the top 15, and just throwing out a few names. Chang Xiaozhong is a guy that he's a former champion in his own right. I could very well see him getting another shot at it. Simpiwe Konko, fighter that had challenged Heki Butler and came up just short against him. He'd be a good opponent. Of course, Byron Rojas is ranked number 2 right behind Loreto. He'll most likely be number 1 since Loreto just got his shot and lost. Julio Mendoza actually would be a really, really good opponent for him, as a matter of fact. If Mendoza's still able to make the weight. But otherwise, CP's still doing his damn thing. As far as I'm concerned, I consider him the 3rd best fighter at the strawweight class. But I wouldn't argue especially hard against people that would have him number 2 or maybe even number 1. I do think when Hangman Mayoten, the WBC champ, should definitely still be ranked number 1, and I do still rank Jose Argumedo as number 2, especially with the big win that he had over Katsunari Takayama, which really is probably the single best win of any champion at the 105-pound weight division. But all that said, CP's still doing his thing, still rising up the ranks and building his legacy for what it's worth. And we'll see exactly what the future pertains for him. So until next time, I will catch you guys in that one. Peace.